Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Ward 4 School Committee Candidate Forum. My name is Rick Grandoni, and I will be your moderator this evening. Tonight we have two write-in candidates running for Ward 4 School Committee, Lindsay Ducharme and Jeffrey Silva. Thank you both for your willingness and desire to volunteer to serve the community of Beverly and, give us your time and energy for these positions. Tonight I'll be asking a series of questions, and our candidates will both have opportunities to answer. We'd like to keep answers under 5 minutes so that we can cover all the content this evening. I will read the questions once for each round, but if the second candidate would like me to repeat the question, I'd be happy to do so. Any questions?
No.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Let's get started. Question number 1. Tell us a bit about yourself and your connection to the school district. Lindsay, why don't you go first?
Sure. So I want to start by saying thank you to BevCam for recording tonight, because I know there's a lot of events happening right now in Beverly, but particularly tonight. And thank you to Katie and Melissa from the Cove PTO for helping to organize tonight's forum. And thank you, Jeff, for being here also, so we can have a nice little forum for ourselves. Okay, so I want to start by saying I'm really passionate about public education. This kind of work really fills my bucket, and it kind of what drives me and excites me, and I get really excited about this kind of work. So I moved here, just a little bit of background. I moved here in 2005 when I got married. I just moved 3 years ago, 2 doors down on the same street. We love the Montserrat area. I have 2 kids in the Beverly Public School System. I have Jackson, who's in 5th grade at the middle school, and I have Emma, who's in 2nd grade at Hannah Elementary School, and I have a nephew, Anthony, who's in 7th grade here at the middle school, who I'm really close with. I have experience with IEPs for both language-based learning differences and social-emotional needs. A little bit of background. In 2015, I created the PTO for the integrated preschool. My son was there as a peer model. He was receiving speech services, but he was there as a peer model, and I saw a need, and the teacher said, basically, we need a PTO. We're the only school in Beverly that doesn't have a PTO, and we could really benefit from one. So I figured out how to start that. I did that, and then I passed it over to another parent when my kids moved into Hannah Elementary School. Since then, I've served as the co-president for the Hannah PTO, and I've been the treasurer for the last 2 years. It's through that PTO involvement, sorry, there's a little bit of feedback. It's through that PTO involvement that I got to know some of the school committee members and felt a deep need to sort of understand and get involved at that level. I also recognize that since most things are about money, that finance and facilities was probably, as a subcommittee to school committee, was probably one of the best places to start. So I applied for, like Jeff, I applied for a position as citizen rep on that subcommittee, and I've served there for a couple of terms. I was also nominated by the chair of that committee to serve on the financial forecast subcommittee to city council. So my involvement at so many levels and in so many areas has given me the perspective I feel like I need to be a valuable addition to the school committee.
Thank you. Jeff?
My name is Jeff Silva. I have been a longtime resident of Beverly. I have gone through the Beverly school system starting not necessarily for my whole life in Beverly, because I sort of moved around, but I did go to the Memorial Beadle School in elementary school, which is now in the location where Walgreens is. I attended Memorial Middle School, which was here before, and I graduated Beverly High School. I have 4 children. 2 are in this Beverly High School now. A freshman, Jocelyn, our youngest. James is a junior. We have 2 older boys that have graduated high school and are in college. One attending Plymouth State and the other one attending North Shore Community College. In terms of myself, after high school, I attended Merrimack College, got a bachelor's in science there, and chose to pursue a graduate degree in chemistry. Went to Johns Hopkins, where I basically developed a career in biotechnology. From there, I did a postdoc at Harvard Medical School, and then went into biotech, where I've been since then. I've been in the biotech industry for about 25 years. In that time, I've mentored students, interns, high school, undergrad. While I was working here in cell signaling technology, just up the street, was able to mentor high school and undergrad interns. During that time, I also was able to do some adjunct teaching at Endicott College. And during that time also was able to get involved in volunteer work and coaching, mostly lacrosse, about 8 years of that. Got involved with city volunteer, helping with the rebuilding of Cove Park. Through those activities, building relationships with families, with students, and sort of what's driving my interest is sort of the relationships that I've established with the kids in coaching, and wanting to do what I can to ensure that they're getting a great education in the Beverly school system.
Great, thank you. So next question, and Jeff, you can take this one first. What motivates your desire to be on the Beverly School Committee?
So as I said before, it was really the years that I've spent with coaching, as well as the time that I've spent over the years with mentoring with interns from high school and undergrad. What really, establishing those relationships with the students, with the parents, being involved in a couple of the volunteer efforts, one which is the Gloucester Biotech Academy. I've been involved with that since it started, which is basically a program that was established to help graduates in Gloucester, graduates of high school in Gloucester, also young adults that may have had a gap year, to have an opportunity to enter the biotech industry without having to go through college. And so the program itself is a one-year program. It's a certificate program that basically puts them through practical lab experience with DNA and protein and a lot of bioanalytical analysis to basically make them productive members within a laboratory. And so that's been rewarding. And we've received some of those graduates in where I work. So that's been gratifying as well. So being involved in mentoring and helping students sort of find their path towards a career path is really what I'm interested in helping out with Beverly.
Nice, thank you. Lindsay, how about you? What motivates you?
Sure.
The desire to be on the school committee?
Sure. So I might have run sooner, except that I always threw a lot of my support behind John Mulady. I always supported him as our representative for Ward 4, and when he announced that he wasn't seeking for re-election, it felt a little bit serendipitous. It felt like this is my time. And it just so happened that it happened after the events, or around the same time as the events of the September school committee meeting, and I felt like I needed to be part of the change, and I needed to try to find my place in that change, and it just felt like it happened at the right time. So obviously I checked with my family to make sure that would be supported. And I think I said in the first part of the first question, I'm just really motivated by the work, and I'm genuinely excited for the work. And I'm anxious to dig in and learn and listen and act, and I think there's a place for me on the school committee, and I want to be part of it. I want to continue the great work that's already happening, and I want to bring a few things over the finish line. I want to be part of the tough decisions that we have to make over the next couple of years. I think we need a caring, thoughtful, responsive person in the seat representing Ward 4, and I care about the thoughts and concerns of my fellow Ward 4 constituents, and I want them to feel heard. I want them to feel represented. I want our kids, our families, our teachers, and our administrators to feel supported and prioritized, and I'm confident that I can do that.
Thank you. Okay, Lindsay, what specific strengths would you bring to the school committee?
Sure. I think that my involvement in the PTO, the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee to School Committee, and the Financial Forecast Subcommittee to City Council has given me some perspective that I think brings a tremendous amount of value. I think it brings an informed perspective. And I think that work at that level helps to support conversation on tough subjects that could help to serve and support valuable members of our community when they have questions or concerns. I think the fact that I have kids still going through the school system now also shows that I have a personal interest in providing the best for our kids, families, teachers, and administrators. I also think that I'm someone that's approachable, at least I try to be, and I genuinely enjoy talking to people, even people with different perspectives, because all perspectives are important and we need to create space for conversation, especially on the important subjects.
Thank you. Jeff, specific strengths.
I think in terms of my background in science and technology, I think there would be a great complement to what to the school committee in terms of being able to provide guidance in terms of training, education, the path that students should have to prepare them for those areas. In terms of my experience in business, both at Cell Signaling, at Waters Corporation, and in the biotech company that I'm in right now, I've got a good business perspective as well as marketing, so I can sort of relay those types of experiences to students to help them maybe find a career path in that direction. My experience in my career path has provided me with the ability to lead groups. In science, there's a lot of diverse perspectives when trying to push projects forward and achieve a particular task. So you're dealing with a lot of different personalities. And so I think that's, in terms of listening and leading under those situations, I have a lot of experience. And that really has a lot to do with respecting your colleagues, working through the challenges, hearing what they have to say, what their contribution is, and sort of amalgamating that into the solution that you're going to come up with. Also, in terms of my experience with the coaching, I've established a lot of relationships with students as well as the parents, and I think I can, the parents and students that I've worked with over the past 8 years or so know that what's important to me is their success, and I would say the same thing for students where I've served as a mentor, that they understand that I'm motivated to make them successful, to provide them the support they need to, enter a career or start their career. So those are just some of the strengths I have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So staying with you, Jeff, how would you describe your family's experiences in the Beverly Public School System, and specifically what has been something that has really stood out to you and your children?
Our kids have all had different social, emotional, and educational needs. Including one of which was in an IAP program. The staff at the schools were able to respond to that and deal with that. We were very pleased with the way that they dealt with that. Having in high school, having had dyslexia, having had these issues, this was something that I had hoped my son would be able to deal with. Tried to provide him with the tools that I learned to sort of get through and focus and succeed in school, work out best practices or systems to be able to focus and study materials. So we had a wonderful experience with the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school. And like I said, our kids were through the spectrum. Through that, it was clear that in our experience with the administrators and the teachers that they've done a great job, and we're very happy with that.
Nice. And Lindsay, how about you?
Yeah. So I thought this was a really personal question, and I was going to provide a personal response. And I think, Jeff, you can probably relate to this a little bit. So my son is also dyslexic, as is his dad. And I've always been a firm believer in, these are my kids, I know them best. But I have learned a lot from our teachers and our administrators about how best to support him. And I think, they've done a great job at that. They've been really patient with me. And I think he's made some great success and great gains. The IEP process is one that I think is really difficult to navigate, can be difficult to navigate. I've had a positive experience with that, but I know that not a lot of people have. I also have experience in our family with some social emotional needs as well, which is interesting that we both share that. But I think what that does speak to is that we have a common thread, not just among the two of us, but probably in our community as well. And so I think making sure that we're serving our students individually, recognizing their individual needs, and supporting those individual needs, whether they be learning differences or social emotional needs, is certainly something we need to keep our eye on. So similarly, I have had similar experience. My experience has been great. It's been hard. I think we've had to have some hard conversations. I've had to ask some tough questions. But I feel like even when we don't come to the conversation, and I guess I'm speaking specifically right now about an IEP meeting, or really just a teacher conference, I feel like I always walked away from those situations, and I'm speaking about myself, and I know this isn't true for everybody, but I always walked away from those situations feeling understood and heard. And so I'm appreciative of that. And even this morning, my daughter was having like a sensory issue. She didn't want to wear a cardigan. And then when she took her cardigan off and put her rain jacket on, her arms were uncomfortable. And it just became this like whole meltdown situation. Again, she's 7 in second grade. And I was just really grateful because when we pulled up to Hannah Elementary School, she didn't want to get out of the car. And I knew Gabrielle Montevecchi would be there. And my daughter is her coffee buddy. And I knew she'd probably have a pretty good chance of being able to get out of the car. My son offered to walk her to the front door, and she just wasn't having it. It was like that sensory issue just sort of sent her into a spiral that she just couldn't come out of. We had Mrs. Montevecchi's help. We had Diarna Krinsky, our school adjustment counselor's help, and I was just standing in the lobby with her, trying to take deep breaths. I picked her up at one point, was swaying her a little bit, and at some point her teacher came down, Paula Quadros, and just knew how to, pull her out of it. She offered to take her over to the nurse's office and help her pick out something comfy and soft, and just understood my daughter at a personal level and knew how to help her get out of that situation. And I just walked out of there feeling like, okay, she's in an okay place and people see her and support her and get it. And I don't feel judged for not having been able to figure out how to get her past that. So I have almost always felt supported. And even when I felt like we came to the table with different thoughts and perspectives, I guess I always appreciate that I felt heard. So that's been our experience. I know that's not the experience of everybody, but I'm grateful for that experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Lindsay, well, let's wind back the time machine a little bit. Looking back at your own experiences as a student, can you share how a specific teacher or educator impacted your life?
Yeah, sure. So when I first thought about this question, I grew up in Manchester, just Manchester by the Sea, a couple towns over, and we had the DECA program there. And I loved the DECA program. We also had a really great teacher that taught some business basics and personal finance basics. I learned how to write a checkbook. I learned how to balance my checkbook. I learned basic finance. I learned the basics of marketing. I learned how to see through some of the messages in advertising. And I just appreciated, I think, and leaned into sort of a different kind of academic experience. That was in high school, but even before that, in second grade, we moved around a little bit. So I lived in Gloucester for a short period of time, and I had a second grade teacher that it wasn't math, it was just it wasn't art, it was just a general education teacher, and she had a passion for art. And so she wove into her teaching artists like Van Gogh and Monet and Renoir. And we were supposed to have a field trip at the end of the year to the Museum of Fine Arts, and I couldn't make it because I was moving halfway through the school year. So my mother ended up taking me to the Museum of Fine Arts, but that teacher took me to the Wenham Tea House, and I remember sitting there with that teacher, and not that anybody should ever expect this of an individual teacher, but what I appreciated so much is that teacher and the teachers that I had in high school made me feel like they saw me for who I was and not just a body in the class, and someone who brought value to the classroom environment, and somebody that they just appreciated spending time with. And I think I just felt valued and interested in different kinds of experiences.
Great memory.
Yeah.
How about you, Jeff?
When we were young, we'd moved around a lot, so in this general area. And my homeroom teacher, who was Mr. Vogler, I don't know if some of you, I'm sure, will know him, happened to also be my history teacher. I happened to have been placed in a general course load. And I remember this day when he, in the middle of his class, took my hand and walked me out of his class and introduced me to a teacher in college prep course, and basically changed my trajectory. From that day on, my classes were all college prep. He knew what I was capable of doing, and it really changed my perspective in terms of what I could do, where I should sort of strive for, and basically got me thinking about college. Till this day, we still have lunch every, once or twice a year. But he, it was a course that I didn't like, and I just don't know why he picked my hand up and sort of walked me to this class, because I really didn't enjoy history. Math and science was what I liked. But he cared about. He saw what I could do. He saw what I was capable of doing, what I was capable of achieving, and just changed my whole perspective in terms of education. Yeah.
Okay, Jeff, next question. Serving on the school committee requires the ability to work collaboratively with others. But what are some of the other skills that you believe a successful school committee member should have?
I think one of the most important things is respect. You're going to be having tough decisions, tough discussions with people in a committee. This happens in work in these committees, and but I mean, the bottom line is that you need to respect each other. You need to respect each other's opinion. Realize that the end goal is to come up with a solution that hopefully meets most of the criteria that you're hoping to succeed, to complete. Patience is also something that's important, because you need to give the opportunity for people to at least express their opinions and hear them out, hear their side, internalize that, contemplate about it, figure out how you can integrate that into the solution. Collaboration is also obviously part of that. And I think also having a connection with the community is also important, because really the end goal is to make it work for everyone in the community. So those are the...
Great, thank you. Lindsay, how about you?
Yeah. So I actually agree with everything Jeff just said. I think respect and patience and collaboration and connection with your community are really important skills. I think to that, I would add just recognition that when we come to the table, there's always room to grow. And that I think it's important to think about things from someone else's perspective, and even take time to pause and consider that if necessary. Because I think, I think about the Maya Angelou quote, do the best you can until you know better and then do better. And I think what that says to me is really that we don't know everything that we need to know in order to make the best decisions. We just all collectively, I think, hope that we do the best that we can in the time we're given with as much information as we're given. And so I think it's, again, just as Jeff said, respect, patience, connection, and collaboration, but also just consideration for different perspectives. I would add that as well.
Thank you. Okay, so for those people listening at home, this is probably the most important question of the evening right now. So pay attention.
I have a feeling I know what it is.
So Lindsay, what is your favorite Halloween candy?
So at first I was thinking about saying something like the kind that doesn't make me feel guilty about eating it or doesn't add any more pounds to the scale. But then I was like, think positive.
No such thing.
No such thing. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to give an honest answer. I dig through their buckets looking for the Reese's peanut butter cups when they're not looking.
Okay, Jeff, your kids are listening, so.
Oh, dang it.
Well, the true answer is I don't have a favorite. There's several, but I will pick one of them.
Fair.
Twix is definitely the top, and then Butterfinger is probably the second.
Those are good.
Both
right.
good. It was a hard choice.
Thanks, you guys. Only a couple more nights to wait, and you'll be all set. Okay, next question for Jeff. Now, this may be the first time that we've had two members of the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee seek a position with the school committee. Can you describe your role on that subcommittee and what has been your biggest takeaway from your time serving on that committee, Jeff?
So this was the first term that I've been sitting on the committee. So and I chose to apply for it after the last election to get a perspective of how the school committee runs and be on a committee and hear that discussion. So I decided to sort of use this as an opportunity to sit back, listen, hear, take it in, to prepare myself for perhaps the next election. In terms of what I learned, where our money is going to and how that is allocated, the tough decisions that are made to shift the money into different departments, different activities. And they're all difficult decisions in terms of where to put that money. I also learned that the committee members, the teachers, the administrators, the support staff, I'll give BevCam a plug too, that there's a lot of support there to make that happen. And I'm just appreciative to be part of that.
Great. And Lindsay, how about you?
Yeah, so I think I was grateful for the ability to get a better understanding for some of the process, because that's a necessary part of being on school committee, to have an understanding of the process and the way things should go. And again, as Jeff said, the tough decisions that we have to make. I think my experience on the PTO relative to how the school committee spends its money, allocates its money, moves its money around, and then forecasts for expected spending that we expect to spend, or money that we expect to spend but haven't yet spent, and sort of tracking that process and the budget setting process has been an important experience for me. And I think that, the PTOs, one of the many things that PTOs do is raise money to help support the school system. And I think some of the things that, with the Hannah PTO, we spend a lot of money on arts and enrichment, and some of that stuff could be part of the school committee budget, it could be part of the building budget or the principal's budget, but because it's part of what the PTO funds, it sort of frees up some of that money for the principals to be able to spend some of their allocated money on something else. So it gave me a kind of a greater, deeper understanding of how the PTO fits together with the school committee, and the way that we manage and forecast and spend the money, whether it's tax dollar money, whether it's allocated gifts or grants. I think we are really lucky to have Jean Sherborne running our finance department. I think she's an incredibly intelligent person, and she's always patient with my questions, and she does a great job explaining things. So I think it's given me a deeper understanding of the way the money functions,
Okay.
which is important.
So, Lindsay, continuing a little bit on the thread of finance, this is a hypothetical question. If Beverly was going to focus on allocating more funding toward hiring, where would you prioritize that money? What new positions would you advocate for?
Sure. So I'm going to start by saying, with consideration the fact that it has to be a group decision, and that I would need to hear more from other school committee members. Right now, I see a need for school adjustment counselors. I feel strongly that our teachers are underpaid. I think our teachers and how they see their value and their place in our community directly affects our kids. Nobody goes into education without kids at the center of their value system, but our educators and paras can't afford to live where they work. And that affects our retention and our ability to recruit quality, diverse teachers and staff. And I think other positions like bus drivers and substitutes are affected by that as well. Right now, we have a pretty significant shortage of bus drivers and substitutes, and I'm worried that it affects our ability to deliver quality support services. I think school adjustment counselors, knowing the social emotional impact of this pandemic, is something that we need to think really critically about. But I think we need to think about the substitute shortage as well. I know that's something that we can only do so much about, but I think the fact that our pay is what it is a little bit of a barrier. At the beginning of this school year, my son is in 5th grade. He moved from elementary school into 5th grade, and his first week, one of the two teachers was out sick. And so he's on an IEP. He has a special education teacher that supports him throughout the day with his language-based needs. She needed to step in and help support the class for the teacher that was out. And that was okay because it was the beginning of the year. And it was mostly about making sure the kids felt comfortable, that they phased in, that they got a little bit used to the routine. And I think that was okay because she was the person that probably understood the best about how to help those kids get in and roll in, and probably the best person under the circumstances to step in and substitute for the teacher. But I think our ability to provide substitutes for teachers and how we sometimes have to pull paras and special education teachers in order to fill that gap is a real problem. I know that special education teachers and children with high needs on IEP get prioritized when there are, the need for teachers to be out. But I think that how we compensate our teachers and how we make Beverly a desirable community is something we also need to, and how that affects our kids is something we really need to think strongly about.
Thank you. Over to you, Jeff.
So in terms of new positions, I think funds would be well spent providing teachers with assistance in increasing their engagement with students, and whether that's through whether they're intern assistants that are helping with that engagement, whether it be classroom activities that would help with that engagement, but additional funding to come up with those types of either support with assistance or tools that the teachers could use to really engage students within their classroom. I would also provide additional funding with regard to the school IT, specifically to help train and provide additional tools for teachers to utilize those types of teaching resources, make them more familiar with how to, and whether that's even providing assistance. This could be an intern that's more IT, sort of interfacing IT with teaching, to help them utilize those resources maybe more efficiently and train them. Also, that IT would also perhaps be able to increase security within the school system to allow maybe to eliminate distractions that kids may have access to in the schools, to keep it focused within the curriculum within the classroom. That's, I think, potentially an area where kids, even though there are warm bodies in the classroom may be distracted through the internet because of the lack of security that's happening within the school. And then lastly, I think with regard to the kids' social activities, providing more resources to fund extracurricular activities outside the classroom. A lot of kids come to school for the classwork, enjoy the classwork, but there's another fraction of kids that come to class for other reasons, the social aspect. And that's a very important part of the education, developing those social skills, whether it be through clubs, band, sports, having the school system just be this rigid, sort of myopic education, classroom only, takes away from the social development that the kids need as well. And so I think that needs to be funded more. I would say even more so, given how kids have suffered over the past 18 months or so.
Yeah. Okay, continuing with you, Jeff. When facing budgetary pressures, and what school system doesn't, let's face it, what would be your priorities?
I'm going to resonate a message from the last question, which is really to maintain a balance of social development and education.
Right.
And what I've heard in the past is that social development has always been cut. The funding for sports, the funding for these other things other than the classroom, that's typically where the money has stayed focused on. But I really think it's a balance between the two in order to help create kids that are independent, confident, to be able to complete high school and enter into the community as productive adults.
Mm-hmm. Lindsay, how about you?
So we're still on the question about,
Facing budgetary pressures,
you.
what would be your priorities?
so I think, with respect for the fact that it has to be a group decision, I would want to collaborate with other school committee members. I see right now a great need for social emotional support, and I think we need to staff for that kind of support. I think the pandemic shed light a little bit on what we expect of our schools. I think we expect not only education, but food and shelter and safety and childcare, and we need to fund for that kind of thing. I think we need to really think about, as a community, what we need to provide in order for those needs to be met. And I think, it's like we set an expectation and we need to be able to financially support that expectation. I'm going to back up and talk a little bit about the social emotional needs for a second. I think kids come to school in a variety of different places, whether elementary school, middle school, or high school. And I think if they don't come to school feeling safe, feeling comfortable, having their basic needs met, then they can't receive any amount of support provided to them. And I think there's a lot of things we could and should talk about in the long term. I think Jeff's points were great, but I think for right now, we have a population of kids that are really, that really need to just sort of have time to come back to school, have time to reintegrate into being together. We're all still wearing masks. School feels different than it did. We have a population of kids that never really even got to experience school in the normal way. So I think we really need to stop and just sort of, realize that we're putting a lot of pressure on some real concerns. We're all concerned about learning loss. But I think, if we don't prioritize and wrap our arms around these kids that are still feeling a lot, those feelings and those pressures are still with them. They're with them now, and they're going to be with them for a while. And I think we really need to, yes, we should think long term. And yes, there's a variety of different things that we could and should be thinking about. But I think we really need to stop and just recognize that our kids need a lot from us right now. And I think we need to just make sure that they are okay to be here every day and that they're getting their basic needs met before we can expect anything else of them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Lindsay, continuing with you. You got to be careful because the PTO organized this forum. So our schools are very fortunate to have such committed PTOs.
Yeah.
As a member of the school committee, how would you see your relationship with PTOs, and what role should PTOs play?
Sure. So I think PTOs play a great role in our community. I will point to the fact that we had Katie Greer, the nationally recognized digital safety expert, here just prior to our forum, brought to us by the PTOs. I think that I'm grateful for my involvement in the PTO. It's what gave me access to school committee members, and it's one of the things that I would like to see continued. I think, so the question is, our schools are very fortunate to have such committed PTOs. Oh, how do I see our relationship with the PTOs, and what role should the PTOs play? So I think PTOs provide, in addition to funding, I think they create opportunity for connection. I think they create opportunity for people to feel involved in their community, get to know other people, be informed. I think they help feel a lot of different needs in a lot of different ways. I think that might depend on the school. I think all the PTOs are a little bit different, but I think they're all sort of uniformly working towards the same thing as well. And I sort of think that they're a great complement. I think PTOs are a great complement to the school committee and to the general school committee in general, and to the school district in general.
Yeah, thank you. Jeff, how about you?
So with
PTOs.
regard to the PTO, I think it's a great way for the school committee to have a connection with regard to the parents, the teachers, the students. I've had the privilege of being able to volunteer for the some PTO programs, mostly the science fair projects, coming in and interacting with the kids, seeing their projects, boosting their spirit, boosting their confidence in, the work that they did. I really enjoyed doing that. And I think maybe over the past, I think I may have participated in 3 or 4 years of that. But that was a very rewarding experience. I also have sort of played a role on the other end, sort of the complement of that, which is a sports booster, providing sort of the other end of the education experience, making sure that the funds were there so that the kids could have a positive experience in sports as well, and see that development on the field. So I have a lot of respect for not only the PTO, but the boosters that help make it a really nice experience for all the kids in the school system. And whether that's a band boosters or another club, those types of parent-led organizations to enhance the program is great, and it's nice to see the level of involvement in Beverly in those different programs. Just shows how the community really wants to support that well-rounded education for the kids.
Thank you. Okay, Jeff, continuing with you. This past term, the school committee had passed a series of resolutions that addressed systemic racism. How do you envision your role as a committee member in increasing outreach to people of color in Beverly?
I think it's a matter of being able to be consistent and being able to promote inclusion, equity for everyone in the school system, and in all the activities, not only in the education, but access to the other programs, other programs that are offered within the school system. So I would actively reach out to all the parents to make sure that they understand that I support that, and like I said, support equity and balance, and for all kids within our school system.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Sure. I say it all the time because I truly believe it. I think we have to create space for difficult conversations and space for open and honest conversation. Respect has to be a top priority. Jeff and I think, have already pointed to that, both of us. But we have to allow each other to ask the tough questions without shame or guilt and without judgment. I think we're all on our own journey. I have a lot of friends on the Human Rights Committee, and I'm grateful for their involvement and their support in our community and their work in our community. But I don't think it stops there. I don't think all the answers are there. I think we have to individually take responsibility for the growth and action that we need to take as individuals to make some meaningful change. I know I'm working on it. I see great opportunity with the equity audit and the work that Dr. Morgan and Dr. Trocheck are doing, and Abu Toppin on the city side. And I want to be part of the collaborative effort to dismantle the systemic disadvantages that some of our community members face every day. That's it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, another hypothetical question. A friend in Beverly has the opportunity to choice their child to a school in a neighboring community. They ask you as a parent and, more importantly, a school committee member for advice. How would you explain that Beverly schools are an ideal fit for that child? Lindsay.
Great. I think I would start by listening. I don't pretend to know what's right for someone else, for their kid or their family. I don't know that Beverly is the right fit for every child. I'd be lying if I said I haven't looked at Landmark myself for my own son. I absolutely did, but at the end of the day, I felt like my child would best be suited here in Beverly. And again, I support public education. I think there are a lot of solutions can be found by connecting and collaborating. And I'd ask who they've talked to. I'd help connect them. It's an interesting thing to be a parent and a school committee member at the same time. We have to be very careful about the hats we wear, and we have to be transparent and respectful of the positions that we hold. The Mass Association of School Committees does a training that all school committee members have to take. I took my training and received my certification a few weeks ago. So I thought that was a really interesting process, and it was kind of an eye-opener because a similar question was posed in the training, and it was just very apparent that you have to be very careful about the hats that you wear and how you help people. You can't offer to solve the problem for them, but it is a job of a school committee member to be responsive, and I think we can do that for friends as well. So I think it's our job to be helpful and responsive. I'd handle that conversation with respect for my position and for the personal story of that friend. I do my best to help them until they're in a place to make the best possible decision for them and their family, and I'd hope whatever the decision they make, they do so feeling supported and respected, no matter the outcome.
And Jeff?
Well, I think in terms of the Beverly school system, or in terms of that person looking to Beverly as a community, I would definitely point out the great aspects of this community: the beaches, the parks, the neighbors, the volunteers, the youth programs, the sports, the fact that the city has dedicated effort in investing in the school system with the new schools, the middle school, the high school. Whether their student is ideal for the Beverly school system, I think that's really a parent's decision. But they can still live in Beverly. But there are within this community other alternatives, whether it be Essex School, where they can learn a trade, or whether it be in Beverly or Landmark. It's a great community, and there are plenty of options for them in this community.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Well, that concludes our forum for this evening. I would like to thank Jeffrey Silva and Lisa Ducharme. You guys are both excellent candidates. I wish you both the best of luck. Thank you to Melissa for organizing this forum and the PTO. And thank you, everybody at home, for listening. Good night.
Thank you.